Right, so over 50% of people in the UK are actively looking for a new job, with like 1 in 2 millennials saying that their job is actively fucking up their mental health. And here's a super fun stat for wannabe lawyers. Over 80% of people within legal jobs say that their work is boring. So what's going on? Basically, loads of people hate their job, and to put it bluntly, this is pretty much because we're given terrible careers advice. But fortunately, we don't have to listen to any of this advice, and there are practical steps that we can take to find a job that we love and to find a job that doesn't completely suck the life out of us. In short, this involves 1, rethinking our approach to careers advice, 2, being comfortable with not knowing what exactly we want, and 3, identifying the things that make us tick. So let's dive straight into it. One of the biggest obstacles we all face when trying to find a job we love is trying to find what sort of work would suit us. Like, we broadly know what sort of work we would enjoy, but there's surprisingly little to guide us beyond that. In fact, the only time I can think of where I was given any guidance on this stuff was in the 1-hour chat I had with a careers advisor at school and at university, and both these occasions proved to be pretty pointless. At school, the careers advisor was only really concerned with me getting into university, and any focus on the steps beyond university wasn't really a concern to her. And to be fair, it wasn't really a concern to me either, given the fact that graduation felt like an eternity away at that time. At university, things weren't much better, to be honest. The dude basically just had a quick look at my CV, said it looked pretty good, and sent me on my way. There was no real discussion around kind of what job would suit me, what would I enjoy, and kind of the different options that would be available. Oh, actually, there was one other thing I remember doing, and that was this really, really long questionnaire that was supposed to give me some further insight into the sort of jobs that would match my own personality type. But the problem with these sorts of questionnaires is that they're pretty outdated in their approach to careers advice. This is because, firstly, they are based on the Myers-Briggs questionnaire, which was developed in the first half of the 20th century, and secondly, the advice that they give us is just so vague that they're essentially worthless. Like, they may tell us that we are going to thrive in a creative position or thrive in a leadership position, but they never really home in on the details of our own individual capacities and abilities. The result is that we're given a really open-ended list of career options available to us. Like, they tell us that we'd be good at working with animals, but we'd also be good at working with numbers. So, it doesn't really help us decide what should we do with our life. So it's this vague, outdated and useless careers advice that we're given when we're younger that steers us into bullshit or boring jobs that we really, really don't enjoy. Now, it's not that I can blame our careers advisors or blame our teachers or blame our parents. Like, I feel that the advice they give us to become doctors, to become accountants, to become, whatever, is logically sound, and we may thrive in those positions. But finding a job we love is about more than finding a job we thrive in. Like, it's more nuanced than that. It's about deciding and determining what are our non-negotiables, like our pleasure points, and then using those as the guiding light to determine what job we should choose. There is something I really quickly want to talk about before we dive into how we can find our own non-negotiables, and that's the notion that everyone's got their life figured out already and we're the only one lagging behind. The truth is, nobody has anything figured out and we're all just making shit up as we go along. And this is no less true when it comes to finding a job. Like, finding a job we love is hard, and basically everyone thinks the same way. One such irrational thought that we all seem to have is the idea that we're just a failure or we're going to amount to nothing because we haven't got a vocation, like a career that we're driven to achieve from a very young age. Like, I'd get angry at my 10-year-old self for not being inspired enough by my piano lessons to become a famous pianist, or by my IT lessons to become the next Mark Zuckerberg. But, let's be totally real here. Like, this is super, super rare. Like, most 10-year-olds don't give a shit about changing the world. All they care about is hanging out with their mates. This problem is made worse by the fact that this notion of vocation features strongly in the biographies of many of the world's most famous people. Like, I don't know, take Marie Curie, for example. From the age of 15, she was fully committed to scientific research and she would let nothing get in her way. And this resulted in her winning 2 Nobel Prizes. Because of people like her then, having a vocation just seems like a surefire way of succeeding in life. And on the flip side to that then, if we don't have a vocation, that just seems to demonstrate to us that we're in some way inferior or in no way capable of succeeding. But having reflected on all of this, I actually think it makes a lot of sense to have no vocation and to have no idea what we want to do with our lives. Like, there's just so much stuff going on in the world and in our head that it's actually legitimately a challenge for us to determine what job we'd love to do, and it does require a certain amount of thought. And in fact, I think it shows maturity to not know what we want to do, rather than punishing ourselves for not knowing what we want to do already. But I get it, while it's probably reassuring to hear that you're not the only one here that thinks this way, it doesn't really help us to take practical steps to find a job that we love. So this leads us on to talking about our non-negotiables or pleasure points. So here's how most people think when trying to find a job. We operate with the general sense that, being a doctor, being a lawyer, being a vet, being on TV will be kind of interesting work, and we have a vague idea of how much we're going to be paid, what the job will involve, and what opportunities may arise. But we're somewhat reluctant to drill into the specific details of what makes that job enjoyable for us. So finding a job we love then is about first identifying our pleasure points and then sifting through all the available career options to see which of those careers align with our identified pleasure points. Basically, when we stop focusing on the externals of salary and technical prerequisites and things like that, we begin to see jobs as a distinct constellation of these pleasure points. So this leads us on to the question of what sort of pleasure points are important to us. Well, what we find enjoyable is obviously pretty subjective. Like, you and I just aren't going to like the same thing. So this is an exercise that you need to do alone, essentially. You need to go find some space where you're not going to get distracted and just write everything down using a pen and paper. And this is exactly what I did last night. And these are the sort of pleasure points that I identified that helped me to steer away from a career in law. Firstly, freedom. There's nothing I care more about being able to control when and where I work. Like, I love being able to decide that I'm going to work in the morning and go to the gym at midday, or maybe I'm going to fly to Spain for a working holiday, or maybe I'm going to do all my work on a Sunday rather than a Friday. Like, if I'm going to get a job, it needs some degree of flexibility. Along those same lines, I also like to have some degree of independence. Like, I like being able to get up early, work on the projects that I enjoy in peace and quiet. I also don't like being pulled into pointless conversations with people. Like, I just want to get into the flow of my work without having those interruptions. So I found from this sort of exercise that being in an office environment probably isn't ideal for me. Secondly, creativity. I've always enjoyed making stuff, and I've never really been too fussed whether or not people see the stuff that I've made. So I've made like various YouTube channels, I've made various blogs, various businesses, and other one-off projects simply because I enjoy doing the thing. Some stuff has worked, some stuff hasn't worked, and it doesn't really matter. I've enjoyed doing it, and that's what counts. And now I'm pretty much addicted to the idea of building my own personal brand, sharing things I've learned about life, about productivity, and basically anything that helps me to level up. So if I'm going to get a job, it either needs to be 1, semi-creative, or 2, encourage my own creative hobbies part-time. Third, teaching. Now, many of the different projects that I've started over the last few years have had some element of teaching to them. So Digestible Notes, for example, is a notes platform that helps people to learn law. My marketing agency had a certain degree of consultation with clients where I had to help teach them various different marketing principles. And also, this very YouTube channel is a form of teaching en masse. There's just something really fun and exciting about getting feedback like, this piece of advice changed my life, or you saved my business, that I just absolutely love. The right job for me then is probably one where I'm helping people in some way. Fourthly, business, and I think it's pretty clear by now that business and running businesses is something that I really enjoy. And I think there's 2 levels to this. Firstly, I like how running a business and making money is sort of connected to a set of down-to-earth virtues like understanding, hard work, efficiency, and discipline. But also, I like how making money is an intellectual pleasure. Like, I don't really care about making money in its own right, but more I see profit as an achievement of psychology. Like, I've understood something about what people need, I've solved a problem, and I've delivered a world-class service. Plus, I found that making £1 per week on the internet is just way more fun than making £100 per day working for someone else. So if I'm going to get a job, it needs to be one where I'm either building some sort of product or leading a project from start to finish. Finally, understanding. Now, learning is basically at the heart of everything I do, ever since I was younger. So I've always been reading like facts books, the Guinness Book of Records, I don't know, the encyclopedia. There's a whole bunch of different like random non-fiction books on a whole range of different topics, and I absolutely love it. And I've always had the mindset that we should finish every single day a little better than when we started it. So any job I do have must not make me feel stagnant. I can't feel that I've just learned everything after a few months and then just plod along for the rest of my career. I want to be in a role where there are new opportunities, like every week. There's opportunities to learn more and more and more, and a company that is dedicated to my own personal development. So yeah, those are some of the pleasure points that acted as my guiding sort of stars when deciding whether or not to change my career path. Like, working as a lawyer wouldn't give me any freedom, it would stifle my creativity, and there wouldn't really be any opportunity to operate as a businessman. Just nothing about the job made me really love it, and that's the thing we should be aiming for. Anyway, spend an hour or so today having a think about your own pleasure points and drop them below, and hopefully that will go some way to help you determine what you want from your career.